I spent all our savings on a cruise for our anniversary, and she'd already been preparing divorce papers for 3 months. She was lying to my face the entire time. My name is David. I'm 35. I thought I knew my wife, Sarah, inside and out. We've been together for 15 years, 10 of them married. We don't have children, and honestly, right now I see that as the only saving grace. The last month has been the strangest of my life, and I still can't piece everything together. But I'll tell you everything exactly as it happened. I need to understand where I went wrong. It all started on October 1st, 4 weeks before our 10th anniversary. I was sitting in the office reviewing quarterly reports. I work as a financial analyst, by the way, when I received an email notification from the travel agency. It was the final bill for the cruise. I had booked everything secretly to give Sarah an incredible surprise. A fully paid, 12-day transatlantic route on one of the most luxurious liners. The ship was scheduled to depart exactly on our anniversary, October 28th. I had drained almost all of our joint savings, the money we were putting aside for a down payment on a house. But I knew she dreamed of a trip like this. I imagined her face when I handed her the tickets, and it warmed me inside, giving meaning to all those years of work. The last 6 months haven't been exactly smooth. Sarah, who works as an art consultant, had become somewhat distant. She was constantly on her phone, taking frequent urgent calls from clients that she would answer in the other room. I attributed it to work stress and her eternal immersion in creative projects. It had always been this way with us. I'm the pragmatist, she's the creative chaos. Our conflicts were always about money and her attitude towards it. As a financier, I believed we should live within our means and plan. She constantly said I was a bore and didn't let her breathe. But these were just normal, everyday arguments. There was never anything that pointed to a catastrophe. So, I paid for this cruise, and 2 days later, on October 3rd, my old friend, a lawyer named Mark, called me with a very strange question. We rarely talk about work, mostly just on weekends over a beer. David, listen, I got a call from a woman, he began, and his voice sounded hesitant. She wants to set up a meeting about, family law. She said you were my friend, and I feel like I shouldn't take the case, but I just didn't understand what was going on. Her name is Sarah. In that moment, when Mark said her name, I felt everything inside me drop. It was a chill that went from my head to my fingertips. Disbelief, and then pure icy rage. Mark, you must have made a mistake, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Sarah. My wife? Why would she contact you? He stammered. She asked me not to tell you. It was a confidential call. But, damn it, David, I can't just stand by. She said she's filing for divorce, that it's already in process, and that she's collecting evidence. I cut him off. Evidence of what? Evidence of your financial negligence. She said everything is ready. All that's left is to file the papers, and that this has been going on for 3 months. 3 months. All these months while I thought our arguments were just normal marital friction. 3 months while she smiled at me over dinner and told me how much she loved me, while we discussed what color to paint our living room. All these 3 months, she was digging into me. 3 months that have passed since July. And today, October 5th, I'm standing in front of our closet, looking at her favorite summer dress, the one she wore when we first met, and I realize that the woman I love is a complete stranger to me. And I, the idiot, just spent all our savings on a cruise that was supposed to be a symbol of our love and a decade together. I knew I had to pretend I knew nothing. I had less than a month to figure out what was going on, and maybe salvage something from my life. I closed the closet. My plan had changed. There will still be a surprise. Only for me. The moment Mark's words sunk in, 3 months, financial negligence, divorce. October 5th became the day I mentally checked out of my marriage and entered a Cold War. I had to play the loving, unsuspecting husband, and Sarah had to continue playing the devoted wife, but I knew the script had changed. Every interaction, every glance, every kiss became a calculated risk. I was watching her and she was watching me. Only one of us knew what the other was truly planning. The first thing I did was access our joint accounts. As a financial analyst, I'm obsessed with details, so the second I got back to the office, I pulled up every transaction for the last 3 months. I was looking for strange transfers, large withdrawals, or anything that would justify her claim of my financial negligence. I manage all our investments and bills. I know where every dollar goes, and it was all exactly as it should be. Except for one thing. In mid-August, about 2 months ago, a transaction I didn't recognize popped up. A transfer of $50,000 from a dormant savings account, one she controlled exclusively for emergency art projects, to an unsecured personal investment account. When I asked her about that account 6 months ago, she swore it was almost empty. Now, 50 grand had vanished into it, and then, a few days later, it was transferred out again to an unknown beneficiary, simply labeled Legal Services Incorporated. $50,000. That was easily enough to pay for a top-tier divorce lawyer, a forensic accountant, and probably set her up in a nice temporary apartment for 6 months. This wasn't just a thoughtless filing. This was a well-funded, calculated attack. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my coffee. This money was part of the emergency fund we'd always agreed to never touch. Now it was being used to destroy me. I decided to test the waters that evening. We were having dinner, grilled salmon, her favorite. The atmosphere was deceptively cozy. "Honey," I said casually, swirling the wine in my glass. "I was looking at the bank statements today, just tidying up before year-end. Did you ever do anything with that old savings account you had, the one for your studio?" Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. She didn't look up immediately. That slight hesitation, that micro-expression of panic. I saw it. The woman who hated lying to me about what movie she wanted to watch was now perfectly comfortable lying to me about $50,000. "Oh, that old thing? No, David, I just moved it," she replied, finally meeting my gaze with a practiced, bright smile. "Remember I was telling you about that huge installation I might get? They needed me to show I had, liquid capital ready to go. So I transferred it to that short-term brokerage account for a few weeks to look professional. I put it back right after. You know how banks are with paperwork. A brilliant lie, plausible, tied to her job, and impossible for me to easily verify without causing a confrontation. The problem was, I knew she hadn't put it back. "Right, the brokerage account," I said, nodding slowly, pretending to buy it. "Good idea. You're always so much smarter than me with the creative finance stuff." She laughed, a short, relieved sound. "You're the smart one, David. I just move pretty things around." I finished my salmon, my appetite completely gone, realizing 2 things. First, she was an expert at this deception, and second, I was completely alone in this. The man who was planning a dream cruise was now in a fight for his financial and emotional life. The $50,000 was her war chest. My cruise was my leverage. I now had less than 3 weeks until October 28th. I had to find out what she was seeking to prove with her financial negligence claim, and why she was doing this so aggressively. I had to learn how she thought. The next few weeks, I decided, I would be her best friend, her most supportive husband. I would watch and wait. October 15th. We were now exactly 2 weeks out from the cruise departure and our anniversary. The atmosphere in our apartment had become a polished, fragile veneer of domestic bliss. I was playing the role of the devoted husband so well, I almost started believing it myself. I brought her flowers, cooked her favorite meals, and listened intently as she detailed her meaningless work drama. Every night, I felt like I was winning an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in a tragedy. But the tension was a physical thing. A wire pulled tight across the living room that only I could see, and I was waiting for it to snap. My primary focus shifted from the missing $50,000 to the financial negligence claim. I needed to know what lie she was building against me. I was meticulous with our finances, almost pathologically so. The only possible weak point I could think of was the large, secret purchase I had just made. The cruise. It cost $35,000, almost all the remaining liquid savings we had earmarked for the house deposit. If she found out before I planned to tell her, she would use it as proof that I acted unilaterally, draining our mutual future on a whim. This realization turned the romantic surprise into a ticking time bomb. I spent my evenings reviewing old mail, hoping to find a hint of her legal preparations that Mark couldn't disclose. Nothing on the kitchen counter, nothing in her desk. She was smart. She must have had a secret drop-off point or APO box. But then, on October 18th, while she was out at an emergency client meeting, a code word, I suspected, for a meeting with her lawyer, I found it. It was in a shoebox at the very back of her side of the linen closet, hidden beneath a stack of old, sentimental letters. It wasn't a bank statement or a will. It was a thick, brown manila envelope. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slid the contents out. It wasn't divorce papers. Not yet, but a detailed statement of marital assets and liabilities, drafted by a law firm called Sterling and Associates. This confirmed everything. This firm was not cheap. But the most damning evidence was a handwritten note clipped to the top page, clearly from Sarah to her lawyer, Elizabeth Sterling. Elizabeth, as we discussed, I need to finalize the valuation before filing. David is planning something big for the 28th. I think it's a trip. He's been acting too nice. If it's something expensive that impacts the house savings, we file immediately using his reckless spending as leverage. Focus on showing I haven't had access to the funds for the last 5 years. I need a clear separation of assets, ASAP. We proceed on the 25th. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The air knocked right out of me. We proceed on the 25th. That was 3 days before the cruise was supposed to leave. 3 days before I planned to surprise her. She wasn't just planning to divorce me. She was waiting for me to make one final, grand, expensive mistake to use as a legal weapon. My beautiful surprise was her exit strategy. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. That night, October 20th, we went out for an early anniversary dinner at the fancy Italian place where we had our first date. The atmosphere was incredibly suffocating. Sarah was dressed in a sleek black dress, sipping her expensive wine, looking like the woman I fell in love with a decade ago. But all I could see was the chilling handwriting on that note. "To us," she said, raising her glass with that perfect, practiced smile. 10 years. Can you believe it? I raised my glass, my mind racing. I had to reveal the cruise now, before the 25th, but not in a way she expected. I needed to control the narrative. "I can believe it, babe," I said, looking her straight in the eyes, forcing a deep, loving sincerity that tasted like ash. "Because I know how much work we both put into this. Speaking of work, I've been thinking about the future. I actually pulled the trigger on something big today, something for us. I think we need a proper escape, a real break from all the stress." I paused, watching her face carefully. Her eyes flickered with instant calculation, the kind of look a poker player gives when they sense a big win. She was already mentally calculating the damage to the house fund. "Oh, really? What kind of big thing?" she asked, her voice light, but her grip tightening on the wine glass. I could feel the tension, the hard conflict finally erupting, not with shouting, but with quiet, deadly maneuvering. She was ready to pounce on my spending. But I was ready too. "Well, you know how much you love the sea, Sarah," I began, leaning in conspiratorially. "I went ahead and finalized the down payment on that little boat we looked at last summer. The cabin cruiser. We can take it out every weekend. It's ours. Paid in full. Isn't that amazing?" I watched as the surprise, the shock, and then the utter confusion washed over her face. She blinked, thrown completely off balance. She was expecting a cruise ticket. She was expecting me to be broke. I just told her I bought a boat. The entire legal strategy outlined in her letter, based on my reckless spending on a non-asset like a trip, was momentarily shattered. This was my first small victory in this Cold War. The game was escalating and I was playing to win. The silence after I dropped the boat bomb was deafening. Sarah's expression wasn't one of delight or even anger at my unilateral spending. It was pure, unadulterated panic. The boat, a fixed asset, a tangible piece of property, complicated her legal strategy massively. She recovered quickly, forcing a brittle smile. A boat? David, that's a lot. Where did you get the money? We were saving that for the house, she said, her voice strained, a clear accusation thinly veiled as concern. I took out a small, short-term loan against my 401k. I lied smoothly, having anticipated this line of questioning. I kept the cruise tickets secret in my wallet. It was a great deal, and honestly, the house deposit just kept sitting there, collecting dust. At least this is an asset we can use. Don't worry, I've already factored in the repayment schedule. Everything is fine. It's for us, babe. For our 10 years. She nodded slowly, sipping her wine, her eyes narrowed in calculation. She didn't believe the 401k lie, but she couldn't prove it, and more importantly, the asset existed. The tension was suffocating. I knew she was debating whether to risk waiting until the 25th as planned, or to file immediately to halt any further unilateral asset acquisition. Then, on October 22nd, everything changed. I was working from home, and Sarah was supposedly at the gallery. I decided to check her laptop, which she rarely used, preferring her iPad. I logged in with the password I knew she hadn't changed since college, the name of her first cat, and found the file I needed. Sarah v. David, Discovery Draft. The Discovery Draft laid out her entire case, and it wasn't what I expected. The financial negligence wasn't about the cruise or the boat. It was focused on a single, massive stock market loss I'd incurred 3 years ago. I'd invested $80,000 of my personal, non-marital bonus in a risky tech startup. It went belly up. I never told her. I covered the loss by shifting other personal funds and decided it was a mistake I'd handle alone. It was a secret but not technically marital fraud. But she knew. The draft included a sworn affidavit from her mother, Eleanor, claiming that I had coerced Sarah into selling a small plot of land she inherited from her grandmother years ago, land worth about $65,000, and that I had immediately used the proceeds, along with the $80,000 from the bonus, to fund my secret, high-risk gambling portfolio, resulting in a total loss of over $145,000 of her separate property. This was a total fabrication. I hadn't coerced her. She chose to sell the land and put the money into an investment bond, and I never touched it. The bond was still there, untouched. But the narrative was clear. She was trying to use the secrecy of the $80,000 loss, combined with a total lie about the land sale, to claim I was reckless and demanding a disproportionate share of the remaining assets. The cruelty was the involvement of her own mother, who clearly hated me enough to lie under oath. I put the laptop down, feeling physically sick. The lie about the boat, the deception about the cruise, it all felt small compared to this elaborate, calculated plan. I had a choice, a huge moral dilemma. Expose her immediately. Show her the statement of assets and the note from Elizabeth Sterling, proving I know about the divorce plan. Confront her with the evidence of her mother's perjury and reveal that I know she moved the $50,000. This would detonate the marriage in a vicious, public legal fight, and I would lose the opportunity to use the cruise as leverage. Wait for the 25th and use the cruise. Let her file the papers on the 25th, confident in her mother's lie. Then, when she serves me the papers, I could calmly pull out the cruise tickets and the receipt for the boat, proving her reckless spending claim is false. I could use the threat of exposing her mother's perjury as massive leverage during the negotiations, essentially buying my freedom and protecting my finances. I chose the second option. I would wait, but I had to break her first. That night, she came home acting exhausted. I looked at her, the woman I loved and hated in equal measure, and I knew I couldn't keep the biggest secret anymore. I had to see her reaction to the real truth. "Sarah," I said softly, standing in the doorway of the living room, "I know about the $50,000 you moved to Legal Services Incorporated, and I know about the statement of assets from Sterling and Associates." Her face drained of color, utterly hollow. The veneer of control finally cracked. "And I also know about the big lie your mother is telling, Sarah. The lie about the land. You know where that bond is. I have the papers. Why are you doing this?" She didn't deny it. Instead, she stared at me with cold, hard eyes and finally confessed, her voice shaking with raw, undisguised contempt. Because you made me feel small, David. For 10 years, you controlled every dime. You were building your perfect, predictable life. I want my life back, and I deserve more than you were ever willing to give me. I nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. Fair enough. You want to fight? You got it. But you need to know something. The boat. It's not real. Her eyes widened, a flicker of hope and confusion returning. No, the boat is not real. But the $35,000 cruise that leaves on the 28th, that's real. I bought it last month with the house savings. I have the tickets, and I know you plan to file on the 25th to use that purchase against me. So here is your moral dilemma, Sarah. The cruise is non-refundable. If you file on the 25th, you lose the chance to take a $35,000 vacation you deserve. If you wait until the 29th, I let you take the cruise, and we start the divorce proceedings amicably, and I swear I won't mention your mother's perjury in court. One last chance to be honest and fair. Do you take the cruise and walk away with your integrity and a free vacation? Or do you file early and lose everything we paid for? I held out the cruise tickets, watching the greed and the conflict battle in her eyes. The clock was ticking to October 25th. October 25th arrived, 3 days after my ultimatum. The atmosphere in the apartment was toxic, thick with unspoken hostility. Sarah and I moved around each other like ghosts, avoiding eye contact, the air vibrating with the knowledge that legal documents were ready to be served. I spent those days monitoring the mail and my email, waiting for the notification that the divorce petition had been filed. Nothing came. She was waiting. The temptation of the $35,000 cruise, the fear of me exposing her mother's perjury, and the desire to maintain some semblance of control had created a perfect stalemate. On the morning of the 28th, our 10th anniversary, the alarm went off at 6 a.m. Today was the day the sovereign of the seas was scheduled to depart. I got up, shaved, and put on a suit. Sarah was already awake, sitting silently on the edge of the bed, perfectly still. "We need to leave in 2 hours to make the check-in," I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. I kept the cruise tickets on the nightstand, a physical presence of the deal we had struck. She finally looked at me, her eyes tired and cold. "You're really going through with this?" "It's our anniversary," I replied, pulling the suitcase I'd packed for myself, and only myself, out of the closet. "The tickets are non-refundable. You made a choice." She got dressed, packed a small duffel bag with a chilling efficiency, and we drove to the port. The ride was silent, punctuated only by the GPS directions. As we pulled into the massive parking garage overlooking the pier, the sovereign of the seas loomed into view, a gleaming white behemoth that represented everything we had built and everything we were about to lose. We checked in, handed over our luggage, and were given our key cards. The process was surreal. 2 people ending their marriage by boarding a romantic anniversary cruise. We walked up the gangway, the cheerful music from the ship's speakers sounding like a mockery. When we reached our suite, I put my bag down and turned to face her. The cabin was beautiful, with a private balcony overlooking the ocean. "This is it, Sarah?" I said, picking up the 2 key cards from the desk. The deal was this. We take the cruise, we act civil, and when we get back, we file for an amicable, uncontested divorce based on irreconcilable differences. I keep my promise about Eleanor's testimony, and you keep your mouth shut about the cruise purchase in the filing. You get a free vacation, and I get a clean exit. She walked to the balcony door and looked out at the water, her back to me. "And if I file right now? From the ship?" I walked over, holding the cards tightly. "You can. But you'd be alone. And I would file a countersuit detailing the $50,000 transfer to Sterling and Associates, exposing your planned perjury. We both lose everything to the lawyers. You know I will do it. You already lost your nerve once 3 days ago." She turned, finally, her face a mask of defeat and suppressed fury. She took a deep breath. "Give me my card." I handed her the key card, and she grasped it like a lifeline. I then reached into my inner jacket pocket, not for my second key card, but for a large brown manila envelope, the exact kind I'd found in her closet, only this one was addressed to me. "Happy anniversary, Sarah," I said, placing the envelope gently on the bed. This is my filing. I had my lawyer draft it yesterday. It's clean, simple, and based on no fault. I signed it this morning. You sign your copy, you leave it in the cabin. The ship docks on November 9th. When I get back, I will find it and file it. We are done. I did not hand her my second key card. I slid it back into my pocket. And you? She whispered, the question betraying a sliver of genuine confusion. I am getting off the ship, I stated, walking to the door. I bought this cruise for us. Now it's just for you. You wanted your life back, Sarah. You have it. 12 days completely free. You can start over right here. I'm giving you a clean slate and a head start. I opened the cabin door. David, wait, she said, her voice finally losing its cold edge, replaced by a slight tremor. I paused at the threshold. You already have everything you wanted, Sarah. You just didn't know how to ask for it without destroying me. Enjoy the voyage. I stepped out, closed the door quietly, and walked straight back to the gangway. As I stood on the pier, the massive ship horn sounded a loud, booming call, signaling its departure. The crowd waved, but I only watched the small, distant balcony of our suite. I saw a figure emerge, Sarah in her black dress, looking out at the receding shore, a single solitary passenger on a ship meant for two. I didn't watch the ship sail away. I got into my car and drove, leaving behind the $35,000 ticket, the signed divorce papers, and the memory of the woman I thought I knew. I had won the fight for my finances, but I had lost everything else. The money was safe, but I was suddenly 35, alone, watching the world move on, and wondering if an expensive victory over betrayal was really a victory at all. I had 1 month to find out who I was without her. The first day had just begun.